So, if you want to make some better materials, obviously the first step is that you need to find the images to use for them. Um, what I would suggest is to go to Google and um, to get it in English and also set the region to a Western country. You can go to google.com/intl/en, and that will take you to an English version of Google, which is also set to favor results from the West rather than from Japan. So you can go ahead and just hit the search button or type anything in and hit the search button and click the Images tab. One warning for you: if you're doing this at school, you definitely want to have Safe Search on. That'll help filter out at least some of the images that you wouldn't want popping up on your screen at work. Um, so I'm just going to search for Sentai pictures. I sometimes use those. Um, so what you're going to want to do is go to Tools and click on Usage Rights. And basically any of the bottom four are fine. Ideally, you would want to do one of the with modifications, but it's not absolutely necessary. Um, Now, this is going to somewhat limit the amount of images that pop up. So, as you saw before, with the first search, we just have pages upon pages upon pages of, perfectly good images to use. Whereas once we filter it down to one of these other options, you're going to have a lot less available. But it's also, legal for you to use. So that's kind of an important step. The next thing that you can do is, if you'll look at this, if you mouse over one of the images, it will actually show you right down here what the resolution of the image is. So, for instance, this image might look like it's a good idea to use, but actually, if you were to try and use it, you can see the quality is really, really, really low. So if you go to Tools and then Size, you can set a minimum resolution for the images that will pop up. 1024 by 768 is kind of the bare minimum that I'll use. Depending on what you're searching for, you can try going a bit higher. For instance, if you're searching for, say, cats, you're going to get about a bajillion results. So you can go for higher resolution images. And really, the larger you go, the better. I don't think that you really need any of these down here. But, 2 megapixel, 4 megapixel is a good size to work with in terms of quality. And also, one thing that you should keep in mind when you're selecting your image, actually two things you should keep in mind. One thing is the kind of aspect ratio of the image. And let's see if I can find a good one to show you what I mean. Yeah, this is a good example. So this image actually isn't particularly good to use. And the reason is because once you've kind of cropped it, um, the shape is going to be more or less square. So if you kind of follow my mouse, you're going to crop this section off, and you're going to crop this section off, and you're going to be left with just a square picture. And the square pictures, there are some uses, like if you're doing a bingo board, or any sort of like game board, then oftentimes square will be better than rectangle. But if you're doing anything like flashcards or the Karuta cards or anything like that, you're going to want something more rectangular in shape. And I actually kind of already mentioned the second thing to keep in mind, and that is how you're going to crop it. So generally speaking, you don't want to have kind of blank space off to the sides, because when you do that, when you make the flashcard or the card to card or whatever you're making, the actual image that you want is going to be a lot smaller than if you crop it down to just be the image that you want. Then it's much larger on the flashcard. Also, you kind of want to keep in mind how it's going to look. So, for instance, I wouldn't use this image because it kind of looks like I badly cropped it and cut off most of the cat's face. Whereas something like this would be perfectly fine, even though when you look at the original image, it doesn't look very good because the cat's quite small. But once you crop it down, I would crop it along here and along here, and then it's rectangular vertically. And I'd probably also cut off the top as well, so you just get that cat in the frame. Other than that, really the only things to keep in mind are that it's appropriate and that it fits what you're kind of trying to do. One thing that I will note is that you can kind of aim for more specific things. So, for instance, I tend to use cats a lot in my flashcards for stuff. And if I'm looking for something more interesting for the kids than just,